Welcome to the realm of my dreams. Do you ever write down your dreams? I do. It's where a good chunk of my story ideas have been inspired from. Anyway, today I wanted to share some of my dreams with you. I've rewritten them to be a little more story-like to hopefully make it a little more interesting. Before I begin, I want to let you know that I do have a lot of nightmares. So this is your warning. If you don't like horror, spooky stories, or disturbing imagery, this won't be for you. There might be some slightly gory scenes described and, again, other disturbing topics. So if these kind of things upset you, I'd recommend not listening any further to this one. But if you're interested, I do have some more lighthearted crafting videos, so you could go watch one of those instead if you like. And final note, this is just a reminder that these are my dreams, even though I'm rewriting them to be a little more story-like. There's some things that still won't make logical sense sometimes, and or they might end up on a cliffhanger, because that's just like the spot where I woke up from my dream. So with the disclaimers out of the way, I'm going to be moving on to the stories. Dream 1. Don't go in the chicken coop. Cam swallowed hard, standing just a short distance from the chicken coop now. Her limbs trembled, and she stood frozen while she tried to will her body to move. Tears pricked in her eyes. She didn't know if she could do this, but she had to. What if it got free and came for her next if she refused to fulfill the wicked thing's demands? She clutched her basket, and with wobbling legs, she walked towards the coop. She could hear the impatient scratching and clawing on the walls as she approached, and it took all her resolve not to burst into tears. She could do that when she was safe at home again. She reached the small entrance to the coop, and getting on her hands and knees, she crawled into the small space. There, the hellhound waited for its meal. It was chained to the wall, but Cam wasn't sure how well it would hold the beast if it really wanted to free itself. She got only as close as she needed to and dumped the contents of her basket in front of the monster. Hunks of meat slopped to the floor, food she had to steal to satiate its hunger. To her shock and terror, the hellhound made no move to eat, when usually it ate like a man starved. She stayed in her spot, her heart pounding in her ribcage, wondering what she did wrong.
"I want more,"
said the hellhound. But Cam didn't understand. She stole quite a bit of food for him, and he never complained before. And before she had a chance to ask, it continued.
"I want human meat. Next time, bring me a human with a foul soul."
Cam nodded quickly and got out of the coop as quickly as she could, barely registering what the hellhound had just said. After that, week after week, Cam lured humans of the hellhound's choosing to the coop. Sometimes he wanted bad people, which she felt less bad about. But when he asked for innocent souls, Cam became sick to her stomach. She could hardly live with herself. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The hellhound was ruining her life. But what else could she do? He'd eat her if she didn't help him, and he'd escape and go on a rampage and eat whoever he wanted. Surely Cam was doing everyone a favor by keeping his food to a minimum, right? After months of this, the hellhound had another new request.
"Climb into my mouth and be swallowed. You will find a corpse of a man in my belly. Open his coffin and let him out. I need you to shave his head, and shave it well. But be careful, he's not all right up there."
It used its claw to gesture to its head. "You want to eat me?" Cam squeaked, tears pooling in her eyes. She was going to throw up.
"Finish this deed and I will let you back out."
With that, the hellhound opened its mouth insanely wide, waiting for Cam to step in. Fearing the hellhound's wrath more than being eaten, she climbed into its mouth and was swallowed whole. She tumbled down into a gray pit, and inside the hellhound was a huge city that looked like it was made of shadows. The only light was a single spotlight casting down on the ground, illuminating a solitary coffin. She did as the hellhound asked and went to the coffin, unlatching it to open it up. As soon as she did this, the corpse sprang upright in the coffin and stood, staring blankly down at her with foggy eyes. Cam jumped back, startled. The corpse had a head of wild, wiry hair that kind of reminded her of Einstein's. In her hand, she noticed a razor had appeared, and she remembered why she came. She crawled onto the coffin with her heart in her throat and began to shave the awful thing's head. Awake. Dream 2. That guy, Ralph. The moon was bright and was Ben's guide, leading him to the house of the man who wronged him. He had become angry and bitter over their dispute, and from there his life felt like it began to spiral out of control. He had enough of his misery, and revenge was on his heart. He planned to break into his once friend's house and kill him. Maybe then his troubles would be over. Ben reached his ex-friend's house and found the window to be unlocked. He smirked. This would be too easy. He pushed the window open slowly, not making a sound, and slipped inside. Below him was a window seat, which made for an even smoother entrance. There you are. Ben nearly jumped out of his skin at the voice and tumbled off the window seat onto the cold hardwood floor. He winced and looked up. There he was. His ex-friend was always one step ahead of him. How the hell did he know about his arrival? His ex-friend continued. I want you to meet my friend, Ralph. Ben squinted through the darkness, only able to make out the silhouette of his ex-friend. What? Who the fuck is Ralph? A weird squishing and sloshing sound coming from the bookshelves was his only answer at first. But then Ralph glided into the moonlight. Ben's mouth opened in a silent scream, and he scrambled away from the thing in front of him. Ralph looked like something that desperately tried to make itself human, but failed at just about every attempt. His skin was wet, green, and spotty like a frog. His eyes were wide-set like a fish, and his body was like someone took several human bodies and smashed them together into a mushy, meaty pile. Ralph had no legs. The bottom half of his body looked more like a slug. The worst part was, every hunk of loosely stitched together body part wheezed in and out like it was breathing, and all the exposed muscle tissue within wriggled grossly and oozed blood with every breath. Ralph reached up for his mask and peeled it off his face, somehow managing to peel off skin with it, leaving the lower half of his face an even more mangled mess. And then Ralph turns to face not Ben, but me, from where I'm watching this dream unfold. And for such a malformed being, he spoke rather eloquently. Hello, Beth. I'm delighted to meet you. I've heard so much about you. It's a shame this is how things have to go. Before I could ask, he lifts his arm with this spiky saw blade attached to it, and it whirs to life, the jagged teeth spinning around and around. For a thing with no legs, he charges at me fast, swinging his blade, aiming for my head. He chases me through the apartment, and I had to hide between the bookshelves, trying desperately to find a way out. At this moment, I notice a blonde woman crouching next to me, and she's breathing heavily like she ran a marathon. She turns to me, eyes wide with horror. Ralph drinks human blood to live, and sometimes pizza. Pizza? The saw blade swings in between the shelves, killing the woman, and Ralph continues to chase me through the endless library. Awake. Dream 3. Suspicious Kingdom. Jane smiled at me and struck a pose, showing off her new avatar she made for the game. What do you think? Worthy of solving a mystery? She asked. I can't help but laugh. She's wearing puffy pants, boots, and a short hooded cloak. All pink, since that was the color scheme for the game. You look like an amateur thief. Not suspicious at all. Like yours is any better. Come on, we have a long road to the castle. She jabs a thumb at the long winding path ahead of us. Ugh, exercise in a video game? Lame. We set off on our new journey, enjoying the almost surreal scenery of this new world. A narrator spoke as we approached the castle. What happened to the princess? Everyone in the kingdom wondered. A tale was spun of an unknown disease that riddled her body, overtaking her before anything could be done to help. Ever since her death, the castle has fallen eerily quiet, and the townsfolk are unsettled. With so little information given about what was going on, townsfolk do what they do best: gossip and speculate. A popular rumor floating around is that the king had a hand in her death, as no one ever really trusted him to begin with. He was a quiet, brooding man, which has only grown worse over time. But who can say? Two adventurers approach the castle, eager to either prove or put these rumors to rest and discover the truth once and for all. Maybe then the tension and fears of the kingdom could finally lift, bringing peace back among the people. "Oh, that's us," Jane whispers to me. We walk up the marble staircase and knock on the enormous wooden doors to the castle. We wait, and after a few seconds, the heavy door opens slowly with a sorrowful creak. The king and queen stand together in the middle of the room, heads bowed slightly and shoulders hunched. Despite the soft pink hues of the castle, which normally would feel dreamy and welcoming to me, made a pit grow in my stomach. Something was off, like a vital organ had been carved out, leaving the palace on the brink of death. It was hollow and empty, and I felt very uneasy approaching them. I kept reminding myself that this wasn't real, it was just a game. The king lifts his head, his eyes looking perpetually downturned and empty.
"Hello, travelers. Please, find out what happened to our daughter."
The queen says nothing. She dips her head and softly weeps.
"The castle is free to roam, but don't go in her room. Ever since her death, it..."
His lip trembled, unable to finish his thought. A knight spoke up on the king's behalf.
"The room is cursed."
His mouth pressed together in a grim line, and he kept his eyes ahead. "Well, we gotta go in there now," Jane nudged me with her elbow. She didn't seem to share my feelings about this place. My stomach was queasy, and something about the game felt too real to me. But Jane looked at the king and queen with bright eyes. "I thought the princess died of a disease. Was that a lie?" she asks. The king shook his head.
"In order to quell the rumors, we announced that she died that way. In truth, none of us know what happened, and the nature of her death was..."
He trailed off again, glancing at the queen as he tried to delicately piece his words together.
"Unnatural, to put it simply. The queen needs to rest. You two should go start your investigation,"
the knight says, ushering us away from them and blocking us from getting any closer now. "Man, I had more questions." "Well, where should we begin?" I ask, wandering towards a random hall to look around. "Hey, scary knight, where's the princess's room? You know, so I know not to go in there." He points up the stairs.
"The large door with the window on it. You can't miss it."
"Great, thanks." Jean grabs my arm and drags me up the stairs with her, the knight watching us the whole time. "We're gonna miss out on cool stuff in the game if we jump to her room right away," I say, reluctantly following. "Nah, we have to see what's in there. I'm too curious." We reach the top of the stairs and wander down the long, vacant hallway. We pass a few doors, and like the knight said, there was an enormous floor-to-ceiling door with a window on it. The window was in the shape of an eye, and from it a beam of bright pink light spilled through, covering us in its warm glow. I tried the doorknob and found it locked. Figures, that would have been too easy. "Good thing I stole these off our buddy the knight." Jane smiles and holds up a key ring, holding one between her fingers with the same eyeball emblem on the end of it. Written on the stem of the slender key was an incantation of some kind. I shook my head. "How did you get that?" "I have my ways," Jane says vaguely and puts the key in the door, whispering the spell while she turns it. There's a small click, and the door opens a crack. More of that pink light flooded through, entrancing us for a moment before we stepped inside. Jane grins and darts inside first, and I follow more cautiously behind. The light in the room seems to be emanating from nowhere, and the room itself looks like it's one frozen in time. Toys are scattered about like someone just got finished playing with them. The bed was still unmade and the curtains were tied open. Unlike the rest of the castle, this room still held some kind of warmth of life. While Jane was busying herself inspecting vanity drawers, I stepped into the enormous walk-in closet. I squinted, finding it odd how dark and cold it was in here. Unlike the bedroom, the closet was stacked with things boxed away, and there was a thick coat of dust on everything. No one had been in here in a long time. But how could that be, since her room seemed so freshly used? I didn't have much time to think about it. There was a loud crash that came from the bedroom, and Jane was screaming, "Oh God, what is that thing?" Worried, I opened the closet door just a crack to see what was going on. That sick feeling settles over me again. Jane is pinned to the ground by this huge robot that looks like a camera, and it has several long, spindly, metallic legs. She's crying out in pain, and before I can rush out to help, the eye of the lens turns red and blinks, making her vanish in a puff of smoke. Then it turns to me, its red eye narrowing. I slam the closet door shut, near tears as my mind scrambles around for what I can do to make it out alive. The door jolts as the robot slams into it, and it takes all my strength to keep it closed again. "You broke the rules. Now you must forget," the robot said, ramming into the door again, nearly knocking me off my feet. In that moment, knowing flooded over me. Jane must have cheated to get in this room or something, and now we were going to be erased. I knew I couldn't escape, and being terrified, I decided to try compromising with it. Wait, I didn't know she was breaking the rules. Please, just let me start at the beginning of the game instead of killing me. There was a pause, followed by some mechanical clicking sounds, and then it spoke again. "Very well. This is your only warning. Your memory of this will still be erased." Taking a deep breath, I slowly open the closet door and step out. I try not to shriek. The camera body on the robot is gone, and instead it's some human head attached to the same legs. And the eyes are still the same red blinking camera lens. It looked at me and blinked its eyes. Disappearing from the game felt like being sucked backwards into the darkness, and I couldn't breathe as I tumbled through this unknown void. I fell on the ground, finding pink grass under my fingertips. I look up and see the castle in the distance, and I smile, ready to start my adventure to find out what happened to the king's daughter. Awake. Dream 4. Alice is lost. Alice wakes up to the sounds of beeping machinery. Her memory was cloudy at best, and her eyelids felt so heavy, she struggled to open them. Forcing herself to sit up, she gave her vision a moment to focus so she could take in her surroundings. The faded blue walls came into view, and she noticed she was sitting upright in a hospital bed. How did she get here? Wanting to know what was going on, she stumbled out of the bed, tumbling to the floor where she was surrounded by all sorts of debris. The more her vision focused, the more she realized what a shitty state this room was in. There were cracks in the walls, and chunks of the wall and ceiling had crumbled to the floor. And not only that, but the room smelt stale and almost sour. She got to her feet and went to the door to get out of here, but she found it to be locked. Panicked, she pounded her fist on the door, shouting for someone to help her, but she received no reply. Just when she was about to give up, the door clicked. "Hello?" she asked, but again, no answer, but this time the door opened when she turned the knob. She stepped into the hall, a weird draft drifting through the empty space. All the other doors were shut, and she wasn't sure what to make of it all. "Hello?" she calls again, wandering down the long corridor until she reaches a lobby area. Strangely, this room is empty too, save for a jack-o'-lantern and a freshly lit fireplace. Alice stared at the pumpkin, finding something about it familiar. She smiled, thinking her mom made it for her, leaving it behind as some kind of clue. She kneels down in front of it. The candle inside the pumpkin wasn't lit, so she removes the top and pulls out the candle, lighting it in the fireplace, and setting it back in the pumpkin, smiling at it fondly. Suddenly, the pumpkin starts coughing and spitting out pumpkin seeds from its mouth. Alice leaps away from it, startled. "Hey, wait!" the jack-o'-lantern says between spitting out seeds, and actually starts shuffling towards her somehow. Not having time for a talking pumpkin, Alice screams, scrambling to her feet and darting out of the room. All the while, the pumpkin head gives chase to her, moving weirdly fast. Wait, I need your help. I'm stuck here like you are," it calls out again. Heart racing, Alice slows down and turns to face the pumpkin again, but keeping her distance. Hey, look, this place is crazy, but I can help you out of here. I just need you to help me find a body. Alice stares at the pumpkin, not really understanding this request. What? How do you expect me to do that? There's this crazy witch scientist who lives in this asylum. If we can find her, all of our problems will be solved. Alice paused, thinking about this. She thought this was a hospital. What was she doing in an asylum? She looks down at the talking jack-o'-lantern. Well, he seems normal enough. He must have been put here by some mistake, too. Will the witch let us out if we find her? I don't want to stay here. There's only one way to find out. We just have to figure out where she is, the Pumpkinhead continued. This sounded like a good enough plan to her, so she picked him up, and they began wandering around the asylum, looking everywhere they could for this elusive witch. Alice and the pumpkin chatted the whole time, becoming close friends on their little journey. They traveled deeper into the asylum, and farther down into the basement. The lights flicker down here, and there's a weird hum of machinery that Alice doesn't recognize, and she's half tempted to turn back, but the pumpkin shouts, "The witch! There she is!" In the back of the room, in between the flickering lights, a tall woman with dark skin stands, wearing a long black lab coat, making her almost blend in with the shadows. She doesn't move, standing eerily still while she waits for them to approach. Alice slowly makes her way over, jumping a little at every noise and buzz of electricity down here. She stays just out of arm's reach of the witch, and lets Pumpkin do the talking. "Why have you come?" the witch asks, her dark eyes being all that's visible beneath her surgical mask. "I need a body. I can't be stuck as a pumpkin forever." The witch steeples her fingers, thinking about it. Her eyes linger on Alice for a moment. "I can transfer your consciousness to a robotic body I've been making. In exchange..." Alice's heart races, her nerves almost making her dizzy. In exchange for what?" "An experiment," was her only reply. Alice didn't want to do this, but Pumpkin didn't seem to notice her hesitation and agrees to these unclear terms. Alice watches as a body that looks human enough lays on a hospital bed in front of the witch, and Pumpkin is set next to it. Sparks flicker between the witch's hands, zapping and buzzing louder as the light becomes stronger. Alice has to shield her eyes from it. "Hey, it worked!" Pumpkin says, examining his new body. Alice looks up, and indeed, Pumpkin finally had his own body. She should be happy, but she could still feel the witch's piercing gaze, and she didn't feel right. Her head started pounding, and there were sharp pains poking through her hands. She began to scream as the pain slowly traveled up her fingertips, farther and farther. It felt like someone was ripping the skin off her hands. Pumpkin looked at her, horrified, and turned to the witch. What's happening? Can't you help her? Please." The witch shook her head in the negative. "The exchange. You need to cut off her hands, but you can replace them with these." The witch holds up a jar, 2 greenish hands floating in a foggy liquid. "You can do this, or she dies." Pumpkin looked hopelessly at Alice, seeing her crumpled figure unconscious on the ground, not sure what to do, but it was this or she died, right? Using the witch's tools, he sawed off her hands and began replacing them with the green ones. But what Pumpkin didn't know was that there was a thunderstorm rolling outside, and when a bolt of lightning struck the asylum, something about it caused his new body to short-circuit and shut down before he could sew on the second hand. Alice, unable to finish the experiment on her own, and the witch nowhere to be seen, stumbled to her feet and began running through the building, desperately trying to find her way out of the asylum. But this place was one big labyrinth, and nothing looked the same when she went back upstairs. Thunder boomed, and lightning crackled across the sky, lighting up the room briefly. Having lost a lot of blood, Alice's vision went dark. She'd run out of time. Awake. And so this concludes my dream stories. I hope you enjoyed the retellings of my dreams. I certainly enjoyed making it. Thanks for sticking around till the end. I look forward to telling you stories again sometime. Bye.